The voice of Captain Scarlet was a deliberate Cary Grant impression, and Gerry Anderson approved it. That single choice says something about what Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons actually was. Not a children's show that happened to get dark, but a serious, artistic gamble wearing a children's show's time slot. We're covering 10 hidden truths about the 1967 series, the craft decisions that unsettled audiences, the careers built inside its miniature sets, and the choices the Andersons fought to keep on screen. The hero at the center cannot die. The villain has no face. The war they're fighting? Humans started it. And the show never once lets anyone forget that. Here's what nobody tells you about Captain Scarlet. None of it reads like a coincidence once you start pulling the threads.
Captain Scarlet.
Sir?
After the rendezvous has been effected, return here to Cloud Base.
Number 1. A war humans started. Most accounts describe the Mysterons simply as the enemy. The alien threat Spectrum exists to stop, but the pilot episode flips that in its opening minutes. A Spectrum mission reaches Mars, mistakes a routine movement for a hostile one, and opens fire first. The Mysterons had shown no aggression. The attack was a human error, and everything that follows, their entire campaign against Earth, is retaliation for a strike they did not start. That inversion sits inside the premise from episode 1 and is never resolved. Reports on the production point to this as a deliberate choice by the Anderson team, though the internal conversations behind it were never fully recorded. What's clear is that the ambiguity stayed. The voice of the Mysterons is never silenced, never defeated, never explained. Once you notice it, every episode reads differently. It's the kind of detail that changes how the entire series plays on a rewatch.
However, I'll be happier when we reach our destination.
Number 2. The uncanny puppet redesign. On Thunderbirds and Stingray, the Century 21 sculptors built heads proportionally larger than the body, an exaggeration that gave those shows a friendly, toy-like quality. For Captain Scarlet, the team pushed toward realistic human proportions instead, aiming to signal a more mature kind of Supermarionation. What they got, in the view of many critics and viewers, was closer to an uncanny valley. Real enough to register as a face, not real enough to let you forget it was a puppet. That unease has been cited in fan writing as one reason the series never matched Thunderbird's ratings, despite the respect it earned from critics at the time. The decision worked exactly as intended on one level and backfired on another, which fits everything else about this show. That gap between intention and reception is one of the clearest examples of Supermarionation's technical ceiling being pushed too far in one direction.
You'll see in a moment, sir.
Number 3. Cary Grant's secret voice. Francis Matthews, who voiced Captain Scarlet and his alter ego Paul Metcalf, has said in interviews that the performance was a deliberate homage to Cary Grant, and that Anderson heard it and approved. Matthews was, at the time, a working British character actor with a substantial resume in Hammer horror pictures, which makes the casting oddly specific. A veteran of gothic horror doing a Hollywood legend impression, voicing an indestructible agent in a Saturday afternoon puppet series. The Grant influence is audible if you listen for it. An unhurried smoothness most puppet heroes of the era simply didn't have. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice to give the lead an aspirational vocal presence. The kind of man the audience wanted to be, not just root for on a Saturday.
Spectrum is green.
Number 4. Real explosives. No margin. Effects supervisor Derek Meddings and his team built the vehicles and sets of Captain Scarlet, the Angel Interceptors, the Spectrum Pursuit vehicles, Cloud Base itself, in enough detail that destruction sequences used real explosive charges detonated on set. A miscalculated charge, a timing error between the puppet rigs and the pyrotechnics, could wreck a set that had taken weeks to build, with no time or budget to rebuild it before the schedule moved on. That pressure ran through the entire 1967 to 1968 production block, episode after episode. Meddings refined his techniques under those exact constraints. Tight budget, tight schedule, 0 second chances on a detonation. And those methods carried directly into the next phase of his career. The man building Cloud Base on a children's series timetable was quietly developing skills for a much bigger stage. Meddings later called those constraints the best training ground he ever had, precisely because there was no safety net.
We're nearly there, sir.
Number 5. One voice, two legacies. Ed Bishop voiced Captain Blue, Adam Svensson, in Captain Scarlet, then returned to the Anderson universe in 1970 for UFO, this time on camera as Commander Ed Straker, lead of Anderson's first fully adult series. UFO dealt with alcoholism, divorce, and the psychological cost of sacrifice, themes with no equivalent in the puppet shows before it. and Straker was defined by exhaustion rather than cool competence. Bishop's voice and face bridged both worlds. For viewers who were teenagers when both shows aired, he was a recognizable presence across two very different versions of the Anderson universe, whether or not they consciously clocked the connection at the time. One performer, one thread, running from a 1967 puppet adventure straight into a 1970 drama that asks something completely different of its audience. Number 6. The RAF veteran behind Green. Cary Grant, who voiced Lieutenant Green aboard Cloud Base, was a Trinidad-born RAF navigator who flew combat missions in the Second World War, was shot down, held as a prisoner of war, and later qualified as a barrister before building a parallel career as one of the best-known black British performers of his generation. He ranked third in command of Cloud Base, directly below Colonel White, and that casting wasn't incidental. Anderson's productions through the 1960s were building deliberately diverse teams into their fictional organizations, and Grant's presence connects the show to a much bigger conversation about representation in British broadcasting, one that was barely beginning at the time he took the role. A combat veteran with a law degree, lending his voice to a puppet on a Saturday afternoon, he would go on to become a published poet and a prominent voice in black British theater long after Cloud Base went off the air.
Captain Blue of Spectrum.
Number 7. A hero who can't die. Captain Scarlet's central premise, that he cannot be permanently killed, created a problem no adventure series of the era had faced. If the audience already knows the hero survives, danger alone can't generate tension, so the writers needed another engine entirely. They solved it two ways: turning Captain Black, the Mysteron-controlled Conrad Turner, into a figure of genuine, permanent menace, whose fate stayed unresolved for the entire run, and making the Angel Interceptor pilots characters whose lives were actually on the line in every engagement, week after week. The result is a show where invulnerability isn't comforting, it's unsettling. He endures, the people around him don't always. That imbalance, built into the premise from day one, is what gives the series its particular uneasy texture, and it's easy to miss on a first watch. That tension between comfort and dread is arguably the single element that separates Captain Scarlet from every other Anderson series before it.
Spectrum is green. Spectrum is taking no chances.
Number 8. The voice with no face. The Mysterons, by design, have no physical form Spectrum can engage, no representative to negotiate with, and no target technology can destroy. Every episode, they exist as a pair of advancing green circles and a voice, Donald Gray's calm, implacable baritone, delivering the weekly threat. Making the antagonist entirely non-corporeal was unusual for any 1967 children's series, and it gave the show a sustained dread the Anderson team had never attempted before. You cannot defeat what you cannot touch. The voice states its intention and withdraws, and the retribution it announces each week traces straight back to the same moral architecture set up in the pilot, still standing, never resolved. The war ends when the series does, not because it's won, simply because the episodes stop.
We're recorded in another building.
Number 9. Anderson's deliberate darkness. Anderson has said in multiple documented interviews that Captain Scarlet was a conscious move away from the family-friendly rescue format of Thunderbirds towards something more austere and adult in tone, opening the series with the death and Mysteron reconstruction of its own lead character, and making death a recurring consequence for named characters throughout the run, was Anderson's deliberate signal that this show played by different rules than its predecessor. ITC Entertainment, which distributed the series internationally, had built its biggest success on the lighter Thunderbirds formula, and the tougher tone here didn't repeat that success in the same way. The writers found ways to generate real tension inside that darker framework, but the direction itself was Anderson's from the very start, and it never wavered across the run. It's a rare case of a creator doubling down on a harder tone even after the marketplace signaled it preferred something softer.
Scarlet.
Number 10. The War That Never Ended. Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons ran exactly 32 episodes, all produced in a single block. When the last one aired, the Mysterons' war was still going. Captain Black remained lost, unreachable, the war's most visible human casualty, his story unfinished. Captain Scarlet was still not fully human. None of it resolved because no second series was ever commissioned to resolve it. And the reason has never been fully documented. The show simply stopped. Derek Meddings, who gave the series its visual weight, later brought practical effects to the Bond films, earned a Special Achievement Academy Award nomination for Superman in 1978, and worked on Tim Burton's Batman in 1989. A straight line from Cloud Base to Gotham. Anderson revisited the concept in 2005 with New Captain Scarlet, a CGI reimagining, But the original questions about Turner, about Scarlet's humanity, about what the Mysterons actually wanted, stayed exactly where he had left them nearly 40 years earlier. What Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons understood, and what its 2-year broadcast run couldn't fully contain, is that a story built on unresolved moral ambiguity doesn't get a clean ending. It gets the ending the premise always pointed toward. So here's the question the series never answered, and no continuation has answered since. If a second series had gone into production in 1968, which thread would you have wanted resolved first? Captain Black's fate, Scarlet's humanity, or what the Mysterons actually wanted all along? And would any answer they wrote have been worth what they'd have had to give up to write it? Spectrum is green, but the mission was never finished. That's the kind of ending only a genuinely ambitious show leaves behind.